Hi, everybody. Happy Wednesday, and thanks so much for being with us on TSL today. I'm Giovanni Heater, joined alongside Kyle Marchak today. We got Carter Hill back behind the scenes producing for us, and he's going to interject. We got a nice new setup where we got a microphone back there. We got a camera for him. Super excited for everything. We're talking NC State football. We're going to have Will Stewart on to break down some of his favorite NC State versus Virginia Tech ball games. And, of course, we're going to break down your Hokies in the pros. It's TSL today on a Wednesday. And it starts right now. TSL today on a Wednesday from the beautiful Corporate Research Center in Blacksburg, Virginia. Hi, everybody. I'm Giovanni Heater, joined alongside Kyle Marchak. Carter Hill is over there behind the scenes today. And, man, we got a good show for you. Let's talk a little bit of news and updates before we start to break down Virginia Tech and NC State here. And, by the way, go ahead and check out the Tech Sideline Podcast episode where they preview and predict the NC State versus Virginia Tech matchup coming up tomorrow. NC State and Tech will do battle down in Raleigh at Carter Finley Stadium. But first, let's get into our news and updates. Kyle, Elizabeth Kitley of Virginia Tech women's basketball named to the Lisa Leslie Award watch list, looked at as one of the best centers in the nation. She was predicted by the ACC media polls to go ahead and repeat as ACC Women's Basketball Player of the Year. Your thoughts on Kitley and this women's basketball squad?
Well, you and I were blessed with her presence in Greensboro last year. She's been so dominant, and throughout the season, she's just been such a fun center to watch. You don't get those talents very often in the ACC where with their height and their physicality, they're as athletic as they are. So I'm not surprised whatsoever.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Kenny Brooks has talked about how she's even improved her game, which is crazy to think about in a lot of ways. Also, another piece of news and updates. Hokies women's soccer fell out of the top 6 in the ACC and will not be hosting an ACC tournament game on Sunday. That was originally probably going to be the date for that game. They fall out of the top 6. They will not be participating in the ACC tournament. And then Virginia Tech and NC State. Let's go talk about the Hokies and the Wolfpack going on in Raleigh tomorrow night. Let's give a position breakdown. This is kind of fun. A little different than what they did on the Tech Sideline podcast because, again, we don't want to relay the same kind of information. So we're going to go position by position, both offensively and defensively, with a little hint of special teams as well, and break down who's got the edge at these specific position groups, and Carter Hill's going to chime in as well. Let's start out with the quarterback position. For this, Kyle, I have it as a tie. If Devin Leary's in the ball game, it's a different story. Obviously, he's out for the season with a torn pec. He was injured in the game before the Syracuse game, and then it was announced the day of the Syracuse game that he would not be participating the rest of the season. So with Jack Chambers in at quarterback, little inexperienced, his first year with NC State, getting reputable snaps here as a starting quarterback. Grant Wells on the other side has struggled a little bit. He's thrown more interceptions than touchdown passes. I kind of have this one as a draw. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you can't really go wrong with a tie considering, like you said, the fact that Leary's out, it's a different story. I'm actually going to go Virginia Tech, and that's not because of the numbers. Obviously, the stats are still supporting NC State with Chambers in, but here's the thing. There's after Chambers' performances, which have been so-so thus far, Chambers and Martin is kind of the conversation coming into this game. Now, it'll probably still end up being Jack Chambers, but if they're talking about MJ Martin, who's a true freshman, possibly coming in for some snaps too, I think that reflects the confidence they have in their backup guy right now. So right now, although Grant Wells isn't statistically the better guy, I think the confidence reflects that Virginia Tech might have a slightly better performance in the quarterback role.
That's an interesting point. Mr. Hill, who you got at the quarterback position?
Wow, that works. Okay, first time we're using the webcam. I didn't know if it was going to work or not. Yeah, I'm actually going to go the Hokies. I think if Virginia Tech had a strong wide receiver room, it would definitely be Virginia Tech that would get the nod. Yes, NC State's on their second/third string quarterback. But I'm gonna go to the Hokies for that reason. Grant Wells is somebody obviously last year threw for over 3,500 yards at Marshall. Comes into Blacksburg. Obviously everybody knows about his struggles, but I still got to give the edge to the Hokies based on his ceiling, and I do think Grant Wells can perform pretty well should he get some help from the wide receiver room.
All right, let's talk about the running back position. This is a position where I'm going to agree with you guys who gave Virginia Tech the edge. I'm going to say Virginia Tech has the edge in the running back room, and it might not speak statistically. Obviously, there's a lot of talent at the running back position on the NC State side of things. Jordan Houston has had a really dominant performance so far this season, and then Sumi Carnobaye as well has been really fantastic. Jack Chambers runs the ball really well on top of that, but I think that the reason the stats don't necessarily speak out is because you don't have a large enough sample size when you talk about your guy Malachi Thomas for Virginia Tech. And when he's in the game, he showed it in Pittsburgh. He's a difference maker. And I think he's a really talented back. Keyshawn King has done some really good things. He's shown that he can be explosive, breaking out some 30-plus yard runs, some longer runs. He's also deadly in the receiving game. I mean, it's such a slight edge. This is another toss-up. And when you look at the paper, NC State really does have the advantage. But I'm going to say with Malachi Thomas in, it makes this a little bit different. I'm going to go Virginia Tech with the edge.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to tell. I think they both have really similar running back contingents. They have, multiple guys that they can use that can inch their way up the field. For NC State, I'm going to choose their side simply because Sumo Karnbay has more touches. And I think with the O-line in front of him, he's looking to have a better performance, although they also are a team that needs to work on getting space off the edge for Sumo Karnbay. But again, Malachi Thomas has looked really impressive. Statistically, he could be a guy who projects to have better numbers than Sumo Karnbay. But I just like Houston and Karnbay together. I think they're a little bit more effective right now.
Carter?
Well, Kyle, I can't help but agree. I got to tell you, I think Malachi Thomas, you hit the nail on the head, would project to have better numbers than Jordan Houston. So far this season, 76 attempts for 304 yards. He has not found the end zone. So, yes, I'm going to give the edge to the Hokies and Malachi Thomas in the running backs room.
Tight ends. Let's talk about tight ends. And I promise I got a lot of NC State coming up here on my list, but I'm going Virginia Tech with the tight ends. When you look at the stats here, NC State doesn't really utilize their tight ends at all in the passing game. Trent Penix is their leading receiver at tight end. He's got 2 receptions for 25 yards. Below him, it's Seedbro, who has 5 receptions for 22 yards. And then after that, it's his younger brother, Seedbro Jr., who's got 1 reception for 3 yards. And then you look on the other side, Virginia Tech really does utilize their tight ends quite well. Nick Gallo is the second leading receiver on this football team right now. 23 receptions, 167 yards. And then Daquan Wright has really emerged. He's a guy that down the road with some development, I mean, Chris Coleman said it last podcast, you could be looking at a guy that has NFL talent and NFL capabilities. Daquan Wright's really young. A lot of people didn't expect him to get involved, and then boom, they throw him in that UNC game in Chapel Hill, and he's a huge part of this offense. So I'm going to give the edge to Virginia Tech, and I don't even know if it has to do as much with talent as the fact that they actually utilize their tight ends a lot more than NC State does.
No, yeah. I mean, I'd still like to argue that Virginia Tech still has a more talented tight end contingent because they recruit tight ends. They're looking to use them. I mean, yeah, so Virginia Tech is my choice. There's been a lot of pleasant surprises. Obviously, Gallo and Wright have been the 2 guys that have been really, pressing the offense up the field. But even then, you have Connor Blumreck, who is the former quarterback, backup quarterback. He was honestly impressive. He had a handful of, Boston College, he had a handful of small receptions. Yeah. But he's really just a guy you look at, you're like, it's cool to have another athlete behind them. Not that that point is really super relevant. But yeah, Virginia Tech is my choice as well.
Carter?
Gonna go, yeah, the Hokies. True freshman Daquan Wright has certainly impressed as of late. You mentioned Nick Gallo. Drake Dulius has not been involved near as much as probably people thought he was going to. Same with Connor Blumreck. But because of Wright's emergence, I will go the Hokies. NC State just doesn't use their tight ends room near as much as you would think.
I think we can kind of blast through the next 2 in a way, especially for time purposes. Offensive line, NC State.
Yeah, NC State.
Carter?
Yeah, NC State.
All right. Now let's talk about the wide receivers. Again, I'm going NC State, and it's really not even close. They got a lot of depth, a lot of talent at the wide receiver position. And to be frank, Virginia Tech really doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, VT has a high roof with a kid like Smith, but there's just more talent. Devin Carter and Thayer Thomas have just been super impressive. And this is a stat that I brought up before the show that I thought was really interesting. Devin Carter had 14 catches against Clemson last year. Now, it wasn't the same case this year, but if you have a dude who can put up numbers like that against a team like Clemson, then you're pretty good in the wide receiver room.
Carter?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely the Wolfpack. NC State loses star receiver Emeka Emezi. Guess what? They're still in really good shape with Devin Carter and Thayer Thomas. And obviously, Virginia Tech's wide receiver room has been one of their major concerns this year. So definitely the Pack.
Thayer Thomas is a baller, man. Let me tell you. I mean, he's got that speed to him. Only 6 foot, 195, but he's just pesky. I mean, he can carve up a defense with the best of them. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit of defense now. Defensive line, I'm going NC State. I think Virginia Tech holds a torch, though, when healthy. Tywan Garbett missed a chunk of time this season. Obviously, he was a force in the Boston College game. He's a difference maker on the field. I really like Cole Nelson off the edge. He's been, I think, more of a contributor than people might have anticipated this year. One guy I wish we've seen more out of, but he's been a little banged up, missed a game or two, has been Josh Fuga, especially after the year he had last year. I kind of expected him to step things up a little bit. So I'm giving that edge to NC State, but I think Virginia Tech is right there, and it's kind of close.
Yeah, not to mention Fuga's really sick tattoos. So he's always fun to watch.
Yes.
But yeah, on a serious note, I have to agree. NC State's just more talented in that category. I mean, they've got White, Baker Williams, and Battle all with multiple tackles, talking about the secondary. When it comes to the tackles, though, they have multiple guys over 40 on the season with Thomas, Wilson, and more. I think they just have more talent at that position straight up.
Carter?
Definitely go NC State. Interesting note, and we talked about it before the show, but Charlie Wiles, NC State's defensive line coach, was here in Blacksburg for the majority of the Frank Beamer era. He was at Murray State before he even got to Tech. He leaves Virginia Tech after the 2019 season. He goes down to Raleigh. The first game that he coaches at NC State, guess what, is in Lane Stadium. And now the Hokies make the return trip to Raleigh 2 years later.
That is why we have Carter as our producer.
That is why Carter turned on the microphone today. All right, let's go ahead and talk some more defense here. Let's go to the cornerback position. I again have Tech here, and again, it's close. And NC State's overall defense is a lot better than Tech. But Virginia Tech has some really impressive corners, and I think it really starts with Mansour Delane, true freshman who, I mean, they're talking about a guy that can play snaps on Sundays by the end of his career, and you just got to hope that the Hokies can keep a guy like that in Blacksburg. Yeah,
I mean, you might have a higher roof with a guy like Mansour Delane. This is another one I think is a toss-up, considering the fact that overall the defense for NC State is statistically better. But I'm going NC State simply because Aiden White has been locked down so far this year. A ton of pass breakups, and he's tied first in the ACC in interceptions, so he's been super impressive.
Yeah, it'd actually go the Wolfpack. Yeah, Dorian Strong out. Yeah, Mansour Delane has certainly stepped up. But still, I mean, you look beyond that and Breon Murray and everybody else, this Virginia Tech unit just doesn't stack up with what they got going on down in Raleigh. So, yeah, NC State.
Linebackers, for me, it's NC State.
Yeah, that's another tough one. I'm probably going to go NC State. You know, as a Hokie, it's hard not to like the way Hollifield's been. His leadership is such an underrated quality, and he's also just incredibly consistent with the fact that he can shut down the middle. But yeah, I think the linebacker contingent is also just more talented right now for NC State.
Yeah, I mean, Isaiah Moore has been really impressive. Drake Thomas, especially, is a guy that stands out, no doubt about it. Carter, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, NC State, Peyton Wilson is an absolute stud. Last year missed a good chunk of the season due to injury. He's back now, and he's performing at a high level, so the Wolfpack.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be a guy that, again, is going to play snaps on Sundays, and he's kind of that marquee guy on the NC State defense. Let's continue now on to the safety position. Safety position here. I, again, am going to go NC State, and you're seeing a little bit of a pattern here as far as NC State's kind of the better team in this matchup on Thursday, and I think everybody across the country knows that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you got Connor and people, and they're both very impressive, and they've really been consistent, not necessarily the weakness on a struggling Hokies defense so far, but NC State just has more production there straight up.
I feel like Chamari Connor in some ways has maybe underperformed, but he's still such an asset and leader to that defense. In some ways, he's kind of like that silent assassin. The defense kind of runs through him. They talked about a lot in the preseason how he's one of the quieter leaders. You know, Dax is the amp him up kind of guy on the defense, and then Chamari's kind of that silent assassin. I just love watching Chamari Connor play. Again, you know, you go NC State there, but just because Chamari maybe is underapproved and, you know, as far as his actual production. But I think Virginia Tech still has some good weapons at safety.
To your point, I mean, a few weeks back when they tossed him 25, I was thinking, man, I forgot that Shamari Connor was another plus player on our defense. Because obviously, again, it's a contingent that struggled a little bit. You guys know which positions have been weak, and Shamari Connor's not that guy that pops up in your head like, man, he needs to perform so much better than this. Although there is still space to improve.
And he's a big contributor on special teams. Carter, who you got at the safeties?
Yeah, I'd go NC State. Yeah, I like Shamari Connor, Jalen Stroman back there as well, and Azir Peoples. But yeah, the Wolfpack more depth. They've had higher player making abilities throughout the year, so definitely would go to NC State here. And like you said, to your point, you're starting to see the trend. NC State is a better team, and Virginia Tech has a decent defense, but NC State's maybe a little bit better.
All right, quickly, let's just blast through these. Virginia Tech for punter for me. Peter Moore has done an outstanding job. He's had a couple of rough games, but I still think he has the edge, especially being a captain on the team and everything like that. And then when you go ahead and you talk about the place kicking position, this is where it gets tough, but I'm going NC State. Christopher Dunn, I mean, he's 20 for 20 on extra points. He's 14 for 14 for field goals, and he's got a long of 53 yards. Those are stats pretty comparable to Will Ross for Virginia Tech. Will Ross, 14 for 15 on extra points. He missed one at Pitt. 8 for 9 on field goals total for the year, and his longest is 49. So I think Dunn beats him out with his leg there.
Yeah, I mean, straight up, you got to go with the numbers at the kicking position. I think Chris Dunn has just been more impressive. He's 100%. So.
Yeah, Hokies at the punter position, Wolfpack at the kicker position.
All right, let's breeze through these. Run defense and pass defense. I got NC State for both.
Run defense, I'm going to go with a tie. I think they both have run stoppers, but pass defense, definitely NC State.
NC State ranked 3rd in the ACC in run defense, Tech 7th. So interesting, but I'm not disagreeing with you. Tech has done a good job, but when you look at Israel Banakanda, 320 yards and 6 touchdowns, it's like, how do you let that happen? You know what I mean? Carter, what do you got?
I'll go NC State for both.
All right. Pass offense and run offense. Again, I'm going NC State for both. And it's weird because I said that running back position went to Virginia Tech, and that one was really close. But they got a quarterback that's pretty much what he does right now, and Jack Chambers is run the football. So I'm going NC State.
Yeah, I mean, and not to mention the O-line's definitely stronger for NC State too. So you can have whoever back there, but when the O-line's carving the path, your run offense is going to be more impressive. So yeah, overall offense, NC State.
All right, there's your Wednesday news and updates and your position breakdown for NC State versus Virginia Tech. Well, when we come back, we're going to go ahead and dive into our Hokies in the pros and give our predictions for the NC State Virginia Tech game on Thursday night. Then on our final segment of the day, Will Stewart's going to hop on and break down his favorite top 5 NC State versus Virginia Tech games historically. He's Kyle Marchak. He's Carter Hill. I'm Giovanni Heater. We'll see you in a minute. It's TSL Today on a Wednesday in Blacksburg.